Hello adventurers and welcome back to my channel. Now a few videos back I discussed that I was going to be sharing something with you all, and so today is the day where we talk about it. I want to tell you a little bit about my journey, kind of where I started and where I am now, and kind of some of the things that I've encountered along the way that have been extremely problematic for me personally in regards to my health, and how I've moved through them and not let them get me down. I think that it's really important that we realize that even though you see people on the internet adventuring, enjoying themselves, having a good time, that not everything is good all the time. And I've had my fair share of moments. And it started out with that very first trip that I took. At the time, I was struggling with my back. My sciatica was at an all-time, worst case scenario moment. I'd gone to a chiropractor, I'd gone to therapy, I'd done acupuncture, I even tried cupping. None of those things were really helping me out. And so I learned that the best thing that I can do is just listen to the cues my body was sending me, and in the process of doing so, have a seat every so often. In fact, the best thing that I could possibly do was to go from an upright position where I was in pain to sitting literally on a hard surface, but not like a stool or something like that, because that would further irritate it. I would have to sit on the actual ground and then just kind of work my way through the pain until it wouldn't make the tears in my eyes continue to well up, because it was bad. At that time, I didn't know if I was going to be able to even do what I'm doing now. 7 years in, I can tell you that after you move through the pain and after you do the correct things, you can. And there's ways that you can kind of find the joy in the pain, so to speak. So today I'm going to talk to you about that, but we're also going to unbox this device that a company sent me so that I can have a little less pain. And I'll show you some of the things I've used throughout the years to help. Now, the other day I received this and I didn't know if it would come in time or not. This is the UTK Heat for Pain Relief Far Infrared Vibration Heating Wrap. And this is supposed to be something that I can wear that will allow a little bit of improvement on those really bad days. Now, this isn't the first time I've used a device to help my back out. In fact, at one point in time, I used a TENS unit because I was struggling and willing to try anything. And it was recommended to me by a sports therapist. And it did help a little bit, but it didn't ultimately solve all the issues. But this infrared is supposed to do a little bit different than a TENS unit would. It's going to allow infrared rays to go into those little areas that are hard to deal with, that you can't necessarily get to when you're giving yourself a little at-home back massage. In fact, this is going to allow this to be a constant penetration that's supposed to really kind of pulse, and as it's pulsing, help my back to feel a little less uncomfortable on the bad days. Let me start off by telling you a little bit about what injured my back in the first place. I actually probably had several factors that worked into this, including that I overstrained the back itself whenever I was working in a previous job. And the continued motion of me having to bend so much just continued to pull right here in that lower lumbar area. And over time, that just became so agitated. So I went and got it checked out, and I found out that because of this particular action, I'd actually worn a portion of a disc kind of down a little bit, and it was allowing the nerve, the sciatic nerve, to really just be crunched up on. Now, if you're not familiar with sciatic pain, this is the nerve right here. You can see this little illustration shows you where the nerve goes, and you can see it goes all the way down your leg. So it makes walking an ongoing stress and strain on this particular nerve. At one point in time, I even got to a point where I was out with some friends one night and I lost all feeling in my foot and I was terrified. And in doing that, I was just like, okay, we have to address this. It's no longer just uncomfortable. This is scary. And so I went again to a professional to find out a little bit more. And in doing so, I learned that you can adjust through a chiropractor. You can have the little acupuncture. You can do the cupping. You can get deep tissue massages. But ultimately, if you have sciatica, you're probably going to have to live with it. Now, there are surgeries which you can have to help you with sciatic pain. However, those are costly, they have a very big recovery time, and they don't recommend them unless you are in that worst case scenario. So that was never an option for me. So whenever I got past that point in my life and I started doing my traveling, that very first trip was going to be the test if I could survive, so to speak. And I went out and hiked all over the place, and I would notice that I was just in pain sometimes, and I would have to sit down, and there was nothing I could do about it. I'd have to move at a slower pace than I'd like to, but there was nothing I could do about it. And I supplemented that pain in a variety of different ways, some of which I'm about to show you. I started off with good old icy hot. Icy Hot was a way that I could mitigate some of the pain so it wouldn't hurt while I was active. And it was the deepest penetrating, nicest feel on the particular area that I was affected by. But I noticed that if my sciatica was flaring up, this would help the back. But if there was any kind of pain going through like my leg, this wasn't really handy for that. I started to learn that sciatica causes a lot of inflammation. So I started to take acetaminophen, which reduces the inflammation. Acetaminophen is the one that I can take. Everybody has something different. Some people can take it. Some people need to take Tylenol. Some need to take aspirin. Always consult your doctor before you take any of these things. I am not a doctor. I am not a specialist. I just know what I went through and what works for me personally. But with that said, I started taking something that would be an anti-inflammatory and using the Icy Hot, and it seemed to passively work for the most part. But I still wasn't completely feeling 110% better. So I needed a little bit more. Naturally, again, I turned to the medical professionals that I knew, and I started a series of stretches. I learned all sorts of interesting stretches that I could do, whether I was here in my base camp or on the road. And because of those, in addition to the anti-inflammatory and the Icy Hot, I found that there was a lot of pressure that was slowly being taken off of those areas. Again, consulting a professional to find out what I needed to do, not just consulting the internet, because even though that is available to everyone, not everything is going to work for every person. And so I found it to be more valuable just to call up the source and be like, hey, please help me. I am in pain. And over the course of doing that, it slowly started to take away the feeling of that pressure. And I was so relieved because now I was able to do more things. Now at this time I was tent camping, so this was very important because every single time I'd pull up to a campsite, I would have to completely pop up everything from my tent to my kitchen to the whole shebang. And that required a lot of weird movements to do that. So having my back in better condition was important. So after I got it under control, I didn't seem to have near as many problems with it, and that was great. At the same time, again, if you have it, you're always going to have it. So there's going to be days where I'm waking up and just feeling like, okay, it's kind of hard today. So I noticed that using Icy Hot in a really repetitive motion over and over day after day, it started to lose its effectiveness just a little bit. So I had to switch it up. So I found some products that I could use as alternative products to stagger in. So for every 1 tube of Icy Hot I go through, I pick up one of these things and I try them out, and they typically keep me in a pretty good balance. Now I don't have pain near as often now, and that's pretty awesome. But at the same time, there are days, especially when the weather is changing, that I feel that pull inward. And I know that I'm going to have to rely a lot more on the stretching and on the Icy Hot and the anti-inflammatory. It wasn't until last year that I actually discovered Tylenol arthritis, and that has made a huge difference in my everyday function. Whenever I am feeling pain, I can now take one Tylenol arthritis, and it pulls away so much of like the joint feeling of the pain. It's hard to explain sciatica to a person who's never experienced it, but basically it's a nerve, but it's also like where your bones feel like they're just taking the load of your weight just so much differently. And surprisingly, these things have all gotten me through some really rough times and made it where the next day I could wake up and be like, okay, let's go. And as you guys see here on the channel, I'm super active. So starting out, I have these two CBD creams. One of them is a freezing point cream, which more similarly aligns with like an Icy Hot, and one is a soothing cream. These can be used for back pain, but I can also use these for other things, especially this guy right here. In fact, if I get an ant bite or anything like that, I can put this on there and it almost immediately takes away the pain and the redness from that. So I like to keep this on hand, but if I am having a problem with my back, I can put a little bit of it on there also, and it penetrates just a little bit deeper and really does help. The freezing point is something that just a little tiny bit goes a really long way. So these have been something that I've integrated into my world as kind of like a every so often thing, but this one more so than this one. CBD is something I knew nothing about whenever I started Vanlife, let me tell you. And a company had reached out to me a long time ago and said, have you tried CBD? And I said, no, is that going to be a thing that's going to help me? And I tried it out and I really became a fan of it. And now these two kinds of items are things that I keep with me constantly. These two right here are my two versions of Icy Hot that I keep on deck. One is a lidocaine based cream and the other one is just a regular pain reliever cream. Both of these are great, but for completely different reasons in my opinion. This one right here has a little different texture and consistency to it. I like to use this one because it's a little bit thinner sometimes, especially during the summer months. This feels a little better on the skin because it has menthol in it. This one is one that I like to use whenever I need it to be coated a bit more, because even though it has menthol in it also, it's a little bit thicker because it's a cream, so you feel it on the skin a bit longer than you do this one. So I'm almost out of this one because I've been kind of using this one a little bit more, so I will transition into another product and then I'll come back and start on this one probably. These are my two stagger products. One of them has the lidocaine and very similarly aligns with that other product that I was showing you with the lidocaine in it. And then this one is for arthritis specific pain, which is really great for the joints. But when I put it on my lower back, what it does for me is it just makes the tension that's kind of going on my spine kind of subside a little bit. Now I repeat, I do not use all of these at the same time. I stagger through them. And I do that for the purpose of my skin not getting acclimated, for them to still be effective and things like that. And I've learned that that's how my body responds to things. Your body might be different. You may be able to use the same one over and over and over, and it might be okay, but for me, this is how I have to do it. So those are the things that have been helping me out kind of along the way, and they've been great. But there's some days whenever I hike, and I hike a lot during the warmer months, and I come back and I'm sore and I'm tired, and even with all the stretches in the world, I still wake up the next morning and I'm like, oh wow, I feel every part of that hike. And a lot of times that focuses in my weakest point, which is clearly my back, where my sciatica flares up. So what do? I do more stretches and I take it slow. And there are some days where I am not capable of doing the things I want to do just because, and that's okay. I think the biggest thing that you can learn if you're wanting to travel and you feel like you have something that could be holding you back is to take it at your own pace. If you're having a day where you do not feel like you're able to, if you feel ill, if you feel sore and tired and like you cannot, there's a difference between like a good sore and a bad sore. You need to know yourself well enough to know yourself and be able to make those choices. And if you're traveling with other people, just be very honest with them from the beginning that you have certain things that might hold you back from being able to go as quickly as you want to on some days, and just keep an open line of communication. I've traveled with numerous people and I always kind of let them know, hey, if I wake up and I can't move, it's going to take me a little bit to get going. And they're very understanding about that. In fact, if they're your friends, they will get it. They will not be like, oh my gosh, no, you have to go now. They'll be like, hey, I just want you to be safe. I want you to be healthy. And I think that that's another bigger story for another day about finding van friends who just kind of get it. And I've been very fortunate in that I have done that. But with that said, I am going to be turning to this guy now, if it works out, on those mornings, so I can move around a little bit better. And maybe even it could be something that I kind of use as a supplement to my evenings to make sure that that doesn't happen. I'm not sure yet. We're about to unbox it and find out. So into this box I will go, but I need to cut this little tab. So we'll just grab a nice knife, put it down in here, and then we should be able to pull it open and find out. Ooh, it has its own little carrying bag. That's nice. That's perfect for taking it on the road. That way it doesn't have anything bad happen to it. This is a nice size little bag that can tuck into a lot of different places in my van. And then inside, let's see. Okay, there's the product. We're gonna have to pull the product out and take it out of all of the plastic and everything. So I'll do that and then we'll check this guy out. Okay, I pulled these two things out. This is the larger piece. This is the part that actually is the belt that wraps around. And this is the plug. So because it has to plug in, it plugs into a regular wall socket, or I can plug this into a power station, which means I'm gonna have to test to see how much power this guy pulls off of a power station in just a moment. But inside here, it looks like there's like a little burrito of other things. So I need to get in here somehow, and I think I can do it by just pulling this open and kind of unrolling it. I'll have to remember how I put this back in here in a little bit, but oh, that is a remote. Okay, cool. Okay, so here it is. Oh, it just, I think, just goes straight in, and then there's a little puzzle piece. Does it fit? in there and then it turns to connect. Yes. Okay, so it pulls together nicely. And then this is the cord. This is a huge cord. The belt itself has these little knobs on the inside of the mesh. It's pretty weighty in this section, so this is going to feel very interesting. I can still easily pick it up with one hand, but it isn't super like feather light. It's got a little bit of weight to it. I'm going to go ahead and grab this and plug it into the wall first, and then we'll bring in a power station in a moment to test it out. Okay, in it goes. There we go. And immediately this guy lit up. So I guess the next part is just taking it and trying it on. So I'm assuming that it just wraps around like a belt, and I'm going to read a little bit more on if this can touch skin or not, or if it's recommended to keep it on top of the clothes. But it has this little hoop that goes through, and then you can tighten it accordingly so that you can get it where you need it to be. And I feel like this might be a good space for it, but I'm going to try to pull it down just a little bit so it can hit that lower back section right there maybe, and then I'll tighten it again. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. Okay, interesting. I have it turned on and it starts out at 68. So I'm going to see how high it goes. Oh my goodness, it immediately goes up to over 100 degrees. Just trying to see how far. Huh. It's pretty wild. It just keeps going. Okay, you can get up to 159 degrees with this. That's awesome. And then after I do that, I don't know what to do next. Oh, it starts to heat. It automatically starts doing it on its own. I can start to feel it already. Oh, okay. This is pretty interesting. It's kind of weird feeling. Huh. Okay. I'm going to just sit here for a minute and see how long it takes to get up to where it's supposed to be. It shows me that it is now 70 degrees already. So in the matter of just like the time that we started, it's already gone up a degree. 71. We've gone up 2 now. So give me a minute and I'll be right back after we figure out how long this takes to get up to the maximum temperature. And then I'm probably going to be boiling in here. Okay, a little update. We've only gone through about 1 minute and it is already at 93 degrees. There's one thing I'm really concerned about though. If this is going to plug into a power station and it's heat driven, heat typically takes a lot more power. So I'm going to have to definitely take that into consideration. But again, I'm going to do a test to see if I'm accurate on that. I hope that it's a low draw heat, because if it's a low draw heat, that would be way better. So while it's finishing off, I think that we could talk a little bit more about other limitations that people have that they feel hinder them a little bit. I know a lot of people on the road that I've met do not have the ideal scenario when it comes to health. And a lot of people truly do restrict themselves from certain kinds of activities as a result of that. And I think that there is a smart way to do that. And then also a way that you're actually doing damage to yourself by not experiencing some of the things. Again, I would never tell you to do something that you don't feel confident in doing. But I also think that sometimes taking the little walk here and there, taking the extra long way to get someplace, that's all fine. You can do those things. And I think that you can give yourself a little bit more credit for being awesome, because I think sometimes whenever we get ourselves into that mindset of, oh, I can't, or oh my goodness, that's just not good, or that hurts, or something like that, we start to do the negative self-talk instead of uplifting ourselves. And just because you have some kind of restrictive thing that is happening in your life, or something that is causing you problems like my sciatica does, you have 2 options. You can do it and be unapologetic and just go slow and take your time. And if you start to feel a hard no, then just stop. Or you can say, nope, not going to do that, and just give up and passively write yourself off. And I think that that's very negative for our mindset as a whole. And again, I'm not telling everybody to go bungee jumping or go rafting or do something insane, but we can find ways to give ourselves a bit more meaningful activity. And I think that overall, that is super healthy for both our positive physical and mental health. And so, yeah, I have to rub some icy hot on my back sometimes. And yeah, it's not comfortable and I have to take a little bit of extra time sometimes. But those things have taught me to be a little bit more kind to myself. Instead of saying all of these negative self-talk things, I instead say, okay, well, it's going to be harder. So let's see how I can do this where it's not going to be as difficult for me to do it. And through that, I have enabled myself 7 years of travel. 7, because I didn't, in the immediate, whenever it was uncomfortable moment, say, yeah, I just can't do this. And I think too many of us talk ourselves out of the things we can do by thinking of the things we can't do. Okay, this thing is warm, 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 and it's 1 degree away. And guess what? It is 4:08, which means that we have successfully done this in about 9 minutes. So I can tell you that in 9 minutes, my back is feeling nice and toasty. It feels like it's a good coverage zone. I don't feel like it's concentrated in just one spot. It widely goes across my back, and I am not a small girl. I have a pretty thick midsection. Okay, so the vibrate is right here on the remote, and I'm just gonna hit it and see what happens. Okay. Oh, there's different settings. Have you ever been to the nail salon and sat in one of those massage chairs? That's what this is like. Different pattern. Very, very much a very aggressive vibrate, but not in a way that's like painful. I could get used to this, and it has patterns, and it just keeps going. We're on pattern 3 now. Listen to this, guys. Is it the quietest? Absolutely not. Is it going to sound weird if you're randomly sitting at a campsite and making this noise? Possibly. Quite possibly. Okay, so 3 settings, 3 vibrate settings, up to 159 degrees. And this is recommended for people who have back issues or are suffering from like period pains and things like that. So that's really awesome. But they have 2 other kinds of these too that are more like a heating pad style. Now, I typically like a heating pad, but I really think this is great because I can move around with it a little bit better than I could with a regular heating pad because it belts on. Okay, I'm going to try it on the Vitid. The Vitid is one of the smallest power stations that I own. It's only just under 300 watts, and I can't run a lot of my heating devices off of it. So I'm really interested to find out if I can run this one on there. If so, that would be super, super cool. Okay, I've got it plugged in, and now I'm going to go turn on the AC and see what happens. Mind you, the Vitid is at 84% right now. So with that, I'm about to turn on this guy and see what happens. Okay. It doesn't seem to be pulling that many watts. 25, 26 watts, 27. Is it going to build? The suspense is on, guys, because if it only pulls that, that's what my fridge pulls, which means that I could run this thing for like 8 hours. So I'm going to sit here for the next 5 or 6 minutes and see if it changes. And if it does not, there is no reason I cannot have this to comfort me in the van. Something else I'm noticing is once it gets to a temperature, it kind of just stalls out because it doesn't have to maintain the temperature by continuing to push power. So you see it go down from like 25 to 0 and then up to like 9 just to maintain. But like right now it's maintaining the temperature, so it's pulling 0 watts. Some of the things that I've learned as I have traveled have been about me keeping up with my health. Other things have been about how I can be active or how I can mitigate like the problems that I am encountering and manage to move forward and do things that make me feel good but don't necessarily put the strain on me as a person, whether it be physical or mental, and to really manage how I move throughout this world in a unique way while sharing it with you guys. And I will say that the biggest problem health-wise that I have had, with the exception of whenever I got sick and gained a bunch of weight and can't get it off, which that's a different story for a different day, has been my back. My back has been an ongoing struggle since well before I started on the road. And again, I'll continue to live with this, but finding meaningful solutions that allow me to deal with these things has been the best thing I could have done for myself. I would have had to have done this in a sticks and bricks or on the road. And I think that sometimes your problems from your real life land follow you onto the road, and you have to know how to process them and deal with them. And dealing with pain is one of those things that is very personal to each and every one of us. If you're a person who is like me and has had a lot of problems, I definitely would say that this particular product does work really well. Again, don't purchase it unless you actually want to invest the $89. But if you are looking for something that's going to give you a little bit more than just a heating pad, this is great. And I think that this is worth every penny personally. So if I were to be presented with this, and especially upon the recommendation of like a doctor or something, I would definitely go for it. It feels very comfortable. It's a neoprene outside, and the interior, the little dot module things that they have in there are very comfortable. I don't know what else to say about it other than that. I'm going to be hanging out for a bit, just enjoying this pain-free existence that I have right now. I hope that you've enjoyed coming along with me today and kind of learning a little bit more about me as a person and what's kind of led me down the path that I've been on and the things that I've struggled with. I like sharing these things with you guys because I know that ultimately we all have some common ground when it comes to things that we go through. And whether you come from the same exact background as me or a completely different one, we all are kind of in the great equalizer of pain happens, and it's how we deal with it. Again, consult your doctor before you do anything. If you're interested in this, I'll leave a link below. I will not make a compensation off of this whatsoever, so it's just up to you guys, but I like it, and I wanted to review it, and I'm glad I did. Till next time, guys. Bye!